Hello and welcome to Tommy Talks TV. I have one singular goal with this show, and that is to help you make smarter decisions so that you can have better relationships. I'd like to start by saying a massive thank you. Thank you for all your likes and your shares and your comments on Facebook, on Instagram, on YouTube. I really appreciate you because you're helping us spread the message further faster. So thank you very much indeed. And I really want to encourage you, if you're watching on my YouTube channel, I want to encourage you to subscribe and click the notifications button so that you don't ever miss anything else that I share. And I want to also say that, if the things that I'm sharing are being a blessing to you, then please share them with other people so that they can be encouraged as well. Now, today I want to share with you part 2 of something that I started talking about last week. So last week I started talking about 15 questions to ask before you get married to someone, and I want to share the second part of that. Last week I shared 5 questions. Today I'm going to be sharing 5 questions, and next week I'll be sharing another 5 questions to ask. Now, I started by saying last week that the question of who you get married to is such a fundamental question, because the decision of who you get married to, next to the decision of receiving Jesus Christ as Lord and Savior, that is the next biggest decision that you will make in your life that will affect the course and the quality of your life. It will affect the kind of life that you will enjoy, the kind of future that you will experience. So it's really important that you're asking the right questions when you want to get married to someone. Now, these questions that you're asking they're relevant not just to the person you want to get married to, but to you as well. So as you're examining the person you want to get married to, you need to be examining yourself as well and making sure that you line up with some of these things that we're sharing. So it's important that you're asking the right questions, and I believe that when you ask the right questions, you will get the right answers. So the sixth thing that you need to ask yourself is this: are we committed to each other? Are we committed to each other? And that's a very fundamental question to ask, because if you're currently in a relationship, there is always bound to be someone prettier, someone more handsome, someone smarter, someone funnier, wealthier, whatever you can think about than the person you're currently with. So the question is this: are you both committed to this relationship and committed to taking it into marriage? Because it's really difficult to build a great marriage if your eyes are basically looking elsewhere to see if there's a better prospect somewhere. So once you're ready to take that step to get married to someone, what you're saying is that, well, I believe that this is the person that I should be building my future with, and I am committed to this relationship. And you both need to match each other with your commitment, because it doesn't really work when one person is committed but then the other person is dragging their feet about getting married. I've seen that sometimes where people are basically trying to persuade or cajole someone to get married. But the thing is this: marriage is not going to make a person committed to you. They either are or they are not. There is no magic in the words I do to suddenly make that person committed to you. So some people may think, well, if I just get them to get married to me, then all will be well. No, they've got to have that heart of commitment and that desire to spend their life and their future with you. And it will take that kind of commitment to build the kind of marriage that you desire to have, and to build a marriage that you can both enjoy. Marriage takes commitment. So are you prepared to say yes to this person and close your eyes to every other potential prospect, and really feel that this is the best thing that I believe that God wanted me to have, and give your best to that marriage? I always say that it's unjust to monopolize somebody's time and their attention if you're not really committed to getting married to them. So you've really got to be thinking about that whole question of commitment. Are you both committed to making this work as a marriage? You're not just playing games, but you're both really committed to making it work as marriage. Now, the second thing, which is now the 7th thing in my list, is kind of closely allied to the one that I just shared. And this has to do with, you both being excited about the relationship. Are you excited about the relationship? And are you excited about each other? There's got to be a thrill when you're planning to get married to someone. There has to be some kind of excitement, because a good relationship is something to shout about. I remember when I was courting with my husband. We courted for 7 years. Story for another day if you haven't heard that story before. But several of those years we were apart because I was still in uni completing my course in architecture, and he was working in banking. And the thing about it was, I remember the first time I ever went to visit in the city where he was working, I got to his office, and everyone was like, oh, wow, we've heard so much about you, and I got to his desk, and there was a picture of me on his desk. That told me that, he was excited about the relationship. A good relationship is something to shout about. So if you're in a relationship with someone who you feel, you've got to hide the relationship, or the person is not excited about the relationship, they don't really want to share it with other people, they don't want to talk about it, then that can be a challenge. So are you both excited about the relationship? Are you both excited about the prospect of being married? I have counseled some people who, they're thinking about getting married to someone, and they're like, well, he's a good person or she's a good person, but, there's not really that kind of excitement. They don't really see that marriage as a gift from God. You should be proud of the person that you're getting married to, and you should see that marriage as a gift from God. So, if you don't, then that could be a potential challenge in the marriage, and it's something that you've got to watch out for, because marriage is something that's supposed to be enjoyed. It's not supposed to be endured. So you should be absolutely excited about the person you're planning to get married to. When you do get married, there'll be all sorts of day-to-day things that you've got to be thinking about in marriage, and then you've got to be able to maintain that excitement in marriage. But you have to start off with that excitement in the first place about being married to this person. So that's really crucial. The next one has to do with physical attraction. Are we physically attracted to each other? Now, this is my number 8, and it can be a very tricky one when you're a Christian in a relationship, because when you're a Christian in a relationship, full well that God's desire for you is that you keep the gift of sex for when you get married. So sex is supposed to be in the right context, and that context is after you are married. But at the same time, there has to be some kind of spark of physical attraction between the two of you before you get married. And when you're in your courtship, you've got to learn how to manage that. But you see, it can be a challenge if you're in a relationship with someone, but there really is no physical attraction at all. And I've had, a lot of people ask me questions about, well, this person is nice, they're a good believer, I think they would make a good spouse, but then there's no attraction. I don't feel excited about the thought of, being, in a sexual relationship with them after we get married. That could be a potential issue in marriage, because a good sex life is fundamental to a good marriage. So if you're with someone who you can't imagine them touching you, you can't imagine yourself being sexually involved with them after you get married, you got to think very, very carefully, because it's going to be unfair on that person if you're not geared up to build a good sexual relationship after you get married. So you got to think about it. People might think, oh well, if they're spiritual, then that's all that works. But this is also a very, very crucial aspect of marriage, because I've seen marriages enter into very challenging circumstances because of just this one thing. I would not put it ahead of all the other things that I've spoken about, but it's also very fundamental. So there has to be that spark and that sexual attraction between you and the person that you want to get married to. And if there isn't, you've got to think very carefully about whether this is actually the right person for you or not. Number 9 is this: can I be happy with you if you never change? This one is a really interesting one, but I think it's such an important thing, because there is no end to the number of people who get married to people whom they are planning to change. It is a huge mistake for you to get married to someone who you see as a makeover project. Someone who you feel, well, once I get married to them, I will change them like this, adjust them like that, make them like this. Well, they're not quite this now, but they will be this after you get married. Marriage is not going to transform that person into the picture of who you want them to be. People grow and they evolve, but then also you've got to be conscious of the fact that human beings are notoriously resistant to change that is imposed from the outside. We change when we want to change. We don't change because people are trying to force us to change or trying to make us change. So if there are things that you've seen in this person that you feel, these are things I can't deal with after I get married, but I'm just hoping, or I'm trusting, or I'm praying that the person will change after we get married, you've got to think again. You've got to think again. The baseline of a successful marriage is contentment. The fact that, as the person is, you are content with them. Yes, we all have our strengths and our weaknesses, and after you get married, there will have to be adjustments. So you would really hope that the person, is prepared to make adjustments. But you've got to look at someone as they are and ask yourself, well, are there strengths the kinds of things that I will celebrate in marriage, and are there weaknesses that I can tolerate even if they never really change? Because you may be looking at a weakness that the person has been trying to change for years and years, or maybe it's something that they don't even feel the need to change at all, and that can get very, very tricky. So what I'm saying is this: there's nothing worse than getting married to someone and then you're constantly bombarding them, trying to nag them into being a different person or a different version of themselves because you feel that as they are not acceptable. Are you willing to give the gift of acceptance to this person as they are? And would you be excited and happy in the marriage as they are if they never change? And you really got to be realistic, because when you look at your prospective partner, you look at their strengths and their weaknesses. For every weakness that you see, you've got to remember that that's just the tip of the iceberg. So there's probably quite a bit more of it, which you will see after you get married, because we always like to put our best foot forward when we're in a relationship with someone. So you've got to be thinking very carefully about the weaknesses that you see displayed, and are there things that you can live with? And the same for you as well. You've got to be thinking about your strengths that you're bringing into the relationship, and where your weaknesses lie as well, and where you feel that change needs to be made. So you've got to think and ask yourself, if this person never changes, am I going to be happy married to them? And number 10, my final one, am I ignoring any warning signals? As you can see, this is closely related to the one that we just shared, because, I realize that marriage is an unconditional commitment to an imperfect person. None of us is perfect. Like I said before, we all bring our strengths and our weaknesses into marriage. But then there's a big difference between what you would call superficial faults and what you could term as actually fundamental character flaws. Right? There are some things that are superficial, faults. Maybe the person is not as tidy as you think they should be. They're not as organized as you would like them to be. Maybe they're not as outgoing as you would like them to be. Those are sort of like things that you can find a way, to work around when you're in a relationship with someone. But then there are things that are very, very fundamental character flaws, and those are things that you need to be watching out for. So things like, chronic unfaithfulness. They can't even be faithful to you when you're in a courtship. How are they going to be faithful to you when you get married if they can't be faithful in a courtship? So that's an example. Or someone who is just verbally or physically abusive. So you get into a heated discussion with that person, and they can be physically abusive to you, want to hit you, or verbally abusive. It's like completely disrespectful. Respect goes out of the window, and they insult you and insult your entire family because they're upset with you. Those are things that you should watch out for. Vengefulness, people that find it difficult to forgive. So if you find out that for other people, if anyone else offends them, they never forgive, then that tells you that you might be in line for that kind of treatment too, if you do something in marriage that might call for their forgiveness. Or maybe they're chronically irresponsible, or maybe there are addictions to alcohol, to drugs, things like that. Or maybe there's a tendency to constantly be living a life of deception. So they're not honest with you. You find that that it's very easy for them to be dishonest to other people. Think about that very carefully. So these are things that are fundamental character flaws, and the truth is this: marriage has no power to change an individual. Only God can. So if you see these sorts of warning signals, you've got to be asking yourself, am I well advised going into this marriage? The Bible says in Proverbs chapter 22 and verse 3, from the Voice translation, it says, prudent people see trouble coming and hide, but the naive walk right into it and they take a beating. It is prudent for you to look at what you're seeing, look at the signals that you're seeing in that marriage, and ask yourself, based on the signals that I'm seeing, what kind of marriage, what kind of life am I going to have with this person if I get married to them? And if you're seeing those signals and you're already worried about the signals that you're seeing, then you got to think very carefully about ending the relationship. That's really important. Act fast now so that you don't have regrets later. So this was my 10th one, and I hope this has blessed you. Next week, I'm going to be sharing with you another 5 to wrap up this series. If this series is helping you, if it's being a blessing to you, then please share it with someone else who it will encourage and who it will be a blessing to as well. Thank you very much, and see you next time. God bless you, and bye for now.